Today we continue our mini deep dive series into early 3D platform games, exploring the ins and outs of Bug on the Sega Saturn.
And action.
Now, I'll address the elephant, or perhaps bug, in the room with this platformer. It's not true 3D, but technically exists in the 2.5D category. However, it does reside in many lists of early 3D platformers I've come across online, being a, air quotes, 3D side-scroller. And it will probably be best to clarify the difference. A 2.5D game is one that's a mix of 2D and 3D style gameplay, often rendering characters' environments with polygons and using a 3D camera to create the appearance of 3D space, while gameplay actually resides on a 2D plane. When you consider the air quotes 3D side scrollers that Sony were being successful with even 3 years after the release of Bug, which didn't offer much more than the sense of freedom you get from this Sega published, Saturn developed game, you're almost compelled to give it its dues from the off. Now, I won't lie, I wasn't aware of the game before I started this series of videos, but I guess that shouldn't have come to me as much of a surprise. Perhaps it passed you by too. I didn't own a Saturn growing up, and neither did any of my friends. The Saturn wasn't selling particularly well in the UK, and was only out I think a couple of months before the PlayStation launched. Plus, once I received my PlayStation that Christmas, nothing else apart from the N64 my best mate had really mattered to me in my 15-year-old brain. Released in the same month as our last reviewed game, Jumpin' Jack, in the EU, being July of 1995, we have Bug, who's green, unlike the majority of part-time call centre staff, is an aspiring actor pinning their hopes on their big break, although the film he signs up to achieve this in the story turns out to be real, although the ending cutscene provides some obscurity on this and whether his family, including his dog, are really being held captive by an evil Spider Queen. Developed by Real-Time Associates for the Sega Saturn and published by Sega, Bug was actually meant to be a Sonic game, and interestingly you do come across Sonic and even race against him in the game. Roll clip. Sega of Japan rejected Sega of America's use of Sonic, so they alternatively reached for a character from a previously rejected Sega Mega Drive or Genesis game, after also considering Astal, released later the same year, and Clockwork Knight, again having recently made his first appearance. Now, Real-Time Associates was founded by David Warhol, not to be confused with Andy Warhol, which is where my mind first went, and a group of ex-Mattel Electronic employees to create games for the Intellivision. However, they actually ended up doing so for no less than 16 other consoles and computer systems, for example bringing Manic Mansion to the NES, Loom to the TurboGrafx 16, and even Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi to the Game Boy. David A. Bean was the producer for Bug. He was also the man behind the program of the H.R. Geiger style point-and-click horror Darkseid, that ended up being ported to the Saturn in the same year as Bug, in 1995. There was a general pressure around this time for developers to come up with new mascots, even by Sega, who obviously has Sonic under their IP, but Bug was put forward as a contender, but unfortunately nosedived in this respect and generally went unnoticed by audiences. It didn't help that the mechanics of the game itself, and the fact that it was 2.5D, wasn't exactly breaking any new ground, as Real Time Associates has the character stuck to a track almost like some Donkey Kong minecart, and apart from having the ability to climb walls and go upside down, travel was only in 4 directions: left, right, back and front. And the Donkey Kong similarities don't end there. All the characters in the game were pre-rendered and converted into sprites using Silicon graphic workstations, much like 1994's Donkey Kong Country. The game was received really quite positively by both audiences and critics, even though not in true 3D, but the game's smoothness and gorgeous astral-like graphics really helped. I was quite shocked to learn that by the end of 1995, 150,000 copies of Bug had been sold in the US, making it the second most popular Saturn game, just behind Daytona USA. Bug, not so imaginatively, is set on Bug Island and consists of 6 worlds made up of 3 levels each, ending with a boss fight. Each level ends when Bug jumps on a bug stop. There's collectibles, as can be expected, crystals mainly, that if you collect 100 becomes an extra life. 1-ups, and in a similar process to the way Sonic loses coins, if Bug runs out of bug juice, which can be replenished through gaining hearts, he loses a life. In fact, many 3D platformers we'll be looking at later employ this mechanic, such as Croc for the PS1 for example, who also happens to collect very similar looking crystals. There was clearly a lot of borrowing, shall we say, going on between different developers. Bug was featured in a successful challenge in episode 5 of series 5 of the TV show Games Master, where one person was blindfolded playing the game while another was shouting instructions in which direction to move and jump in order to collect 14 crystals in under a minute's time. Roll the clip.
Well, bottom left hand corner screen is a little can there, that's the energy the Bug's got left. On the bottom right hand screen is the number of jewels. He's got 6 already in that first clutch. The communication working very well at this point actually. Not even a slightest hint of energy left either. Time wise, 15 seconds gone, still going very well. Another 2 there. Got another 2. Listen to that communication in action. This is a relationship with real potential. 2 more there. He's missed that one though. He's got it now. 10 jewels, a little bit of a hit there, you can see the energy juice going down. 10 jewels, 35 seconds, 4 more jewels to go, that's all, they could do this. Always hit again though, that energy bar's quite low, it's 1 more hit and that'll be it, it's over. He's coming down, it's so close, they've only got 4 more to get. There's some here, that's 11, that's 12, he's going to watch, he's been hit again. 13, 1 more to get, it's desperately close. And they've done it, that's 14, 56.
As I mentioned earlier, if we were to look at the 2.5D platformers the PlayStation brought out some years afterwards, it demonstrates why the gameplay of Bug connected with audiences so well. As the following PS games aren't on my upcoming list to explore, I thought it may be a good time to compare some of them within this dive. The first I came across was Pandemonium, which has similar camera work to Canola, Door to Phantomile, although Canola wasn't released for another year and a half. And with Pandemonium, the camera far too often zoomed far too close to your character, which they fixed in its sequel, Pandemonium 2, being a fantastic 2.5D game all round. But then, comparing it back even further to when Bug was released, we're talking pretty much 2 further years of advancements in game design and mechanics to get there. With Canola, Door to Phantomile being its full title, released in the middle of 1998, the camera would constantly be on a curving movement following the character. Although on a track, still, it sure did give the illusion that you were exploring every which way of the levels. Finally, I looked at Tumba, which, like Bug, has an exclamation mark at the end. Again, released around mid-1998, you can quite easily conclude a step back with straight-up side-scrolling action being even more restrictive than Bug in terms of freedom. You would get a little hint of 3D perspective when the camera would rotate to the right ever so slightly when the character was hanging from a ledge or pulling themselves up, and sometimes the camera would zoom, but this is a full 2 years post Super Mario 64 if you consider the Japanese release dates. So perhaps Bug is deserving of more praise than we might first think, taking into account all the games that operated in this crossover space some way into the future. Please let us know your thoughts on Bug in the comment section below. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video, and if you enjoyed this content, we'll be releasing more mini deep dives into further 3D platform games soon, so please subscribe so you don't miss out. Till next time!
Nice, but